Welcome to The Explainer. We are diving straight into a massive chapter of ancient history today. It's a period that completely reshaped the ancient world, yet somehow it still flies under the radar for a lot of people. We're talking about the 25th dynasty of ancient Egypt. This was a time when the powerful Kingdom of Kush, located down in modern-day Sudan, rose up and forged an empire stretching across the entire Nile Valley. You might know these rulers as the Black Pharaohs. Over the next few minutes, we're going to explore their meteoric rise, their booming cities, their incredible architecture, and of course, their epic clash with another ancient superpower. Let's get into it. So, let's kick things off with a little trivia that might actually challenge what you think you know about the ancient world. Who built more pyramids than the Egyptians? I mean, when we hear the word pyramid, our brains almost instantly picture Giza, right? But the true capital of pyramid building actually lies much further south. The answer is the Kushites. That's right, they built over 200 pyramids across their territory, with a massive cluster sitting right in the necropolis of Meroe. Just let that sink in for a second. More than 200 pyramids dotting the landscape of modern-day Sudan. That sheer volume alone is a massive clue. It tells us right out of the gate that we're dealing with an incredibly sophisticated, powerful, and deeply spiritual civilization. Section 1. Rise of the Black Pharaohs. Okay, so how exactly did this southern kingdom step up to rule the much older Egyptian civilization? Well, we're not just talking about a quick border raid here. This was a century-long dynasty. It really kicks off in 744 BC when King Piye pushes north to conquer Egypt. And what's fascinating is he didn't frame it as a foreign invasion, but rather as a holy war to restore order. By 712 BC, his successor, Shabitku, had total control over the entire Nile Valley and moved the capital right up to Memphis. Then in 690 BC, we hit Taharqa's reign. This was the true golden age of prosperity and huge construction projects. Finally, we reach 663 BC, where we see King Tantamani making a final stand as the borders start to buckle under intense foreign pressure. Let's actually look at the guy who started the whole thing, King Piye. On his famous Stele of Victory, he literally declared himself beloved of Amun. Piye is such a complex figure. He really saw himself as the ultimate protector of traditional Egyptian religion. But the historical records also show a very uniquely Kushite personality. He was known to be surprisingly compassionate, but man, he had an absolute fierce love of horses. Seriously, he used highly advanced cavalry tactics to steamroll his rivals in Egypt, and he demanded the absolute finest horses as tribute. The guy even had 8 of his most prized horses buried right alongside him. Section 2. Sacred Cities of Kush. Now, to truly understand these rulers, we have to look south at their spiritual and administrative home turf. Get a load of this scale, 22 hectares. The archaeological complex of Kerma and Duki Gel is just absolutely massive. And that number is so important because it proves this wasn't just some remote, dusty outpost. This was a thriving, cutting-edge urban center, positioned right at the strategic crossroads of major trade routes connecting sub-Saharan Africa to the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. And right smack in the middle of this giant metropolis was the Defufa. Basically, it was a colossal mud brick religious center that served as the beating heart of the entire Kushite capital. The city planning around it was incredibly smart, too. The whole place was protected by a complex network of fortifications, dried canals that could hold seasonal water, sprawling royal residences, and these really distinct, large circular audience halls. And if you want to talk about technological prowess, check this out. Right at the foot of that Defufa, archaeologists unearthed a massive, cross-shaped bronze furnace. Kushite craftsmen were absolute masters when it came to metallurgy. They weren't just sitting around importing luxury goods from elsewhere. They were actively manufacturing highly specialized bronze plaques, intricate faience, and gorgeous ceramics right there in their own backyard. Section 3. Pyramids of the South. Let's shift gears and talk about the architectural renaissance that blew up during their golden age. Here's the really cool part. The Kushites definitely adopted pyramid building to link themselves to ancient divine kingship, but they didn't just copy-paste the Egyptian designs. Not at all. While Egyptian pyramids have those massive, sprawling bases and flatter angles, Kushite pyramids were totally different. They had much smaller bases, usually just 6 to 12 meters across, but they shot straight up at a very steep 70-degree angle, reaching up to 30 meters high. It gave them this incredibly sharp, elegant, uniquely Nubian silhouette. Plus, they built these cool little funerary chapels right onto the front of them. Alongside that unique architecture, they had a totally distinct social vibe going on, heavily driven by the Kandakes. These were the fierce Nubian queen mothers. Now, unlike in a lot of neighboring ancient cultures, these women played absolutely vital roles in both politics and religion. It's a fantastic detail because it strongly hints at these older, indigenous, matrilineal traditions that the Kushites fiercely protected, even while they were ruling over Egypt. You can clearly see this confident cultural mashup in the religion, too. They were deeply devoted to traditional Egyptian deities, especially Ammon. In fact, they believed Ammon's true home was actually right in their own territory at Gebelberg Hall. But they worshipped Ammon right alongside uniquely Kushite gods like Apidimak. He was this terrifying, lion-headed god of war who had absolutely no equivalent up in Egypt. They were building an empire that proudly synthesized the very best of both worlds. Section 4. Clash of the Empires. Look, an empire this wealthy and expansive doesn't just exist in a vacuum. A collision was bound to happen. Let's look at the geopolitical tension that changed everything. Welcome to the 7th century BC. The ancient world was basically dominated by two heavyweight superpowers. On one side, you've got the Neo-Assyrian Empire roaring out of Mesopotamia, led by absolutely ruthless kings like Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal. On the other side, the 25th dynasty of Kush, led by Taharqa and later Tantamani. Both of these massive empires wanted control over the highly lucrative trade routes in Levant. After decades of tense proxy wars, the Assyrians finally made their move and pushed south, sparking a direct, violent invasion of Egypt. Things totally boiled over in 663 BC. The Assyrians captured Memphis and relentlessly pushed all the way south to Thebes, which basically forced King Tantamani to flee back to Nubia. The Assyrian sack of Thebes was so brutal, so terrifying, that shockwaves were felt across the entire ancient Near East. It's even recorded in the biblical book of Nahum as the ultimate cautionary tale of horrific destruction. The Assyrian records, of course, boast about completely deporting the population and dragging away these massive obelisks as plunder. But wait, here is a massive historical plot twist. The Assyrian texts boast of absolute annihilation. Actually, scratch that. They made it sound like they wiped the city off the map completely. But modern archaeology tells a completely different story. Excavations at Thebes show absolutely zero evidence of a major destruction layer from 663 BC. None. Instead of total ruin, we see local continuity. The exact same officials who were running the show before the supposed sack were still at their desks right after it, and they just kept building tombs like nothing happened. It's a pretty great reminder that ancient propaganda was just as exaggerated as the modern stuff. Section 5. A lasting Nubian legacy. So, Tantamoni lost his foothold in Egypt, which effectively closed the curtain on the 25th dynasty's rule up north. But their story does not end there. Here's how it played out. After the Assyrians finally packed up and left, an Egyptian vassal named Psamtik I stepped into the power vacuum and unified Egypt. But it was the next guy, Psamtik II, who really went on the offensive. In 592 BC, he launched a violent, targeted campaign to literally chisel the Kushites out of history. He smashed their statues and painstakingly erased their names from monuments. To survive, the Kushite capital retreated even further south to Meroe, where, amazingly, their civilization just kept right on flourishing for centuries. You know, history is incredibly hard to completely erase. Recently, archaeologists uncovered something amazing, the Duki Gel Pit. Inside, they found 7 monumental statues of the Kushite kings, including Taharqa and Tantamani. Now, they were intentionally smashed to pieces, almost certainly during Psamtik's Second's campaign, but they were also very carefully buried. It looks like loyal priests were desperately trying to hide and protect them. Dating back to the 7th and 6th centuries BC, these recovered statues literally give a face and a voice back to the Black Pharaohs. Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to think about. The Kingdom of Kush was this breathtakingly advanced, literate, and powerful empire that conquered Egypt and went toe-to-toe with Assyria. Yet for centuries, it was deliberately scrubbed from the record books and left buried beneath the Saharan sands. So how many other powerful, advanced ancient civilizations are still out there, hidden away, just waiting for archaeology to uncover their untold stories? Keep that in mind the next time you're reading up on ancient history. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.